Well, hi guys and girls, Emma again. Welcome back to the spare room. Welcome back to one of the final videos, I guess, of this little steam engine build. I don't think it'll be the last one, but we're going to get a fair bit done today. A few little jobs. We're putting this back together. We've painted the wheels, which I'm pretty happy with. I've just put a bit of a stripe on there. Big thanks to David Few for picking the colour and for a million other things. It's a little appreciation shout out there to David Few, who's one of the first Patreon supporters here and also a wonderful help in so many ways in this channel. So give him a shout out. He hasn't got a YouTube channel yet. We're working on him. So we're putting this back together. We had to make a nut, which was a very easy little job. Just a piece of hex bar to hold this back against here. And the boiler fits in there like that, see? Another little job which I've discovered we needed to do was to put a hole or a slot to match this in the opposite side. And it's shown in the drawings, but it doesn't really say why. But the reason is, when this condensate that comes out of the engine and up the chimney runs back down, it runs back through this hole and then back out here and dribbles, rather than having an engine full of rusty water. So that's the reason for that. Before we put the chimney back on, we've got to bend this pipe, and I've just bent it over gently with my fingers here, and we need to bend it back past here. And we might even have to anneal it again, because that's as hard as a rock. And we're going to do some damage if we don't put some time into getting that right. So only one thing to do with that: pull the boiler apart, pull it all to bits, slip the boiler out, anneal this pipe, and start again. So we've annealed that and polished it up, put it back together, and this is a nice soft tube to bend in here now. It's nice to keep this nice and parallel around this way. Pipework's going to make or break this engine, unfortunately, because it's something, along with sheet metal work, pipework's one thing that I've never been very good at. So we put that back on. Make sure we get this nice and straight, and it's not. That's pretty good. I don't think that has to be particularly tight, but just snugged up. We're going to buckle this. And we're back on the wheels. All tightened up nice. Looks pretty good. So what's the next job? We put that safety valve back in there just so it doesn't fill up with dirt. This engine plate goes. Probably what we need to do is take this frame off, settle this up now, drill through this hole at midpoint, top and bottom of the crank here, which is mid-stroke. just spot that. So we've got 2 holes here. Drill them through and counter bore them the same size as the pipe on the back. And chop this pipe off to length so it fits in the hole there nicely. Then we need to make another pipe to go in this hole here for the exhaust. And we can think about soldering them up. So we've got this all together off the engine. I've got some proper black screws, the same as those, to go in there that I picked up at a electronics store. It's about all you can buy at electronics store is zippy boxes or project boxes and computer screws. It's pretty poor sort of a thing. But anyway, enough of that rant. I've picked up some proper screws and we'll put them in last when we put it back together finally. This, if you remember, has a hole all the way through. So we're just going to put the drill gently in the drill bit, in the drill chuck, in the drill press. We're going to set this right on top and we're going to drill, just spot that one. We're going to set it right on the bottom and we're going to spot that one. And that should give us 2 holes that we can drill all the way through carefully. And we need to counterbore the back so that this pipe sits in here. So that's the next project. I'm going to go over the drill press. I'm not going to film this because my drill press is pretty noisy and a little bit embarrassing. And that's why you probably don't see a whole lot of drill press activity on this channel. But the other thing is that we've got a light project to hopefully get to this week and put on the drill press. Because this is one of those jobs that I've got to hold a torch in my teeth after dark. But it's morning now, so we won't have any problems with that. Anyway, that's an aside. Let's set this up nicely at the halfway mark and spot him. Turn it round and spot the other one. And come back and we'll take him apart and we'll have a look at the marks. So there we go. I think you can see that there's 2 little dots there and they're pretty well spot on where they need to be. These will align with this hole here in the back. We fill this up with drill shavings. So it all wants a good wash out before it goes back together. So that's something you've got to be fairly diligent about. This all wants a clean. We've got this a nice fit in there. 1 drill shaving in between. You've got to score down the bore and you're going to find that it's going to leak and it's not going to run anywhere near as nice and it's going to be disappointing. Anyway, next job is to drill these right the way through. Flip it over. We're going to measure this pipe and find a drill this size. And we're going to spot the backs or counterbore the backs a little bit. There's plenty of meat there so that this pipe will fit inside. So this is something that's probably going to happen to you at some point. And I debated about whether to include this in the video, but I think I will. What happened was that even though I had this in the vise and had it holding it pretty firm, I thought, it only took a fraction of a second for that drill to grab and run all the way through there. And that part's not much good, but we can repair it. And before you think, oh crap, I've got to make another one of these, I filed it up by hand, it's a bit of a job. I've got to, it sounds like an effort. I'm really not interested in this project anymore. I might leave it a week and see what happens. And then 12 months later, it's sitting on the shelf and unfinished. This is how you fix it. I've made a little brass plug, which is going to sit in there like that. And I'm going to hard solder that in there, around that side. And then finish each side off, re-drill him. And no one's ever going to know. No one's ever going to see that. And if we silver solder that in there and then soft solder the pipes, nothing's ever going to be a problem. So that's what I'm going to do. So there we go. There's 2 counterbored holes in the back. We've got a little bit of a low spot there where the solder didn't quite, well, the solder probably shrank a bit when it cooled off. Not going to worry anything. It's under the cylinder. No one's even going to notice. So no one's ever going to know if you don't tell anyone, and I'm not going to tell anyone, so we're pretty good there. All these bits need a bit of a clean. Little paintbrush. A bit of thinners or WD-40 or something like that. Give everything a wash up pretty regularly before you reassemble it. This needs to go back on there. And the thing about making model engines of this type, or of any type, in particular steam locomotives I found, but in this type in particular, well, of any sort of model engine or any sort of machine, really, is that you're going to have to get used to pulling this apart and putting it back together a million times before you're finished. And it gets a bit monotonous. But you get pretty quick at it and you get a good understanding of how it all goes together. So that goes back on next. Next job really is to cut this pipe. And push it nice and firm on there in the right spot. So we'll just mark that. Slip this off again. We should be able to run around this nicely with a pipe cutter. I've got a little one that'll go in here, I think, without taking the boiler out again. So after what seems to be a colossal amount of time messing around trying to get these pipes fitted up, we've got the chimney straight, we've got the safety valve in the middle of the hole, we've got everything screwed up tight. We've got the exhaust pipe in, and we've got the steam pipe into the top hole. We need to check that, because there's nothing more embarrassing than the engine that runs backwards. That's kind of important on this. So it needs to run over at the top. Put this in here. This needs to be the exhaust, and the downside is the power stroke. So we got that right. That's important. Next job is to solder these. A little bit of rosin core and a soft, tiny little bushy flame is what we're going to do here. It's only going to take the tiniest touch, but everything's a nice fit up, so I'm pretty happy about that. It's going to take a bit of time and a bit of care here, just to make sure that we don't melt anything else or wreck our paint or disturb anything. We should be pretty safe, I think. So we've got a little pencil flame. And some rosin core electronic solder. Don't apply both at once. Just get him hot enough for the solder to run there. And when we're done, we should have a nice bright solder connection there that really looks the business. And there we go, all the way around. Everything looks really good. Job's done. If you put too much solder on, or use a too thick a solder, you're going to find that these two little holes in the back here are blocked up. So let's wipe all this acid off here. Where it's split and cleaned up. And the job at the moment, or the next job, will be to take all this apart again, groan, and give everything a clean up with steel wool, put him back together. And then we're sort of starting to look like we can put the rest of the engine apart together. So that's what we've got. We've got this pipe, which is your exhaust, and this one, which is your intake. I've given everything a polish up. We've got our two ports on this side that line up with the cylinder. There's one more little soft soldering job that needs to be done. And we need to solder this hole up. There's a couple of ways to do this. You could just use a hot iron and cover it over with a bit of solder, and that's probably plenty good enough. I don't think that you'll use a torch without melting the rest and get it right. I'm probably going to tap this and put a screw in it at this stage, which is probably a smart thing to do. And it feels like a better repair than trying to solder it. So I'm going to go and do that and put a little, probably a 10 or a 12 BA screw in there. And put this thing all back together. So I've tapped this 8BA, and I've got a little 8BA cheesehead screw here. It's not very big. I'm just going to put that together with a bit of RTV, which is basically a gasket sealant. Won't need very much. We can wipe the bit off the top. And there we go. That's probably my improvement on this engine. Solder's good, and it never ever has to come apart. If you can solder that without melting the end cap or the piece off here, good on you. But at the moment that's not going to happen for me, so I know my limitations. I've given this a good clean up, and the piston. So we can put this together with a bit of oil. And we just probably should have made sure everything cleared here before we did this, but we've got space here and everything looks pretty good. A little bit of oil on these bearings. And we're starting to look like that's pretty good. The only other real part to do is to make the pulley, which goes on here, and put the belt in place, cut it to length, and we can steam this up. So that's going to be the next video. Keep an eye out for that, because I think we're going to actually try this out. And there's going to be another video as well making this canopy, which I've already started. And I've started filming that. And that just sits on top here and looks nice. And just going to add that little finishing touch. And it's not something that I've seen very often on a Kenneth Wells engine, and there are reasons for that. It's a pretty tricky piece to make, but let's see how we go with it. Anyway, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you're watching this on YouTube. If you're watching it on Patreon, you guys are amazing. You absolutely rock. Pretty excited to get this finished and going. And it's because of you guys, so thanks heaps. And really, really, really appreciate that. The ones that have gone the extra mile, that's an amazing thing too. So, well, next time, guys and girls, and be kind to each other.